So we have already seen our validation with request objects, and this validation is now you can this validation is for only another method. So in each method are in the controller where you want to validate, we have to write the validation method just like we have validate. So this validate and give the request object and put the array, and in the array we can also define our rule email, which is string required, and pipeline must be email. So this email validation method we have to put in each method if we want to update the email. So we have to validate again by using this method validation. So this is in a big application we have to do this action again and again. But the good thing is that we can have a request form request validation, and we can define it on a request. So throughout the application, wherever we need to validate the data, we have to use this one code, which is may become the reusability function of programming. So we can reusable this request. So in this, but now in format the validation, we have to validate the email request in our another update method. So this is not good. And we can how we can achieve this in by using a journal request. So let's jump to our terminal and see where is the PHP artisan list, and we can list our math PHP artisan commands, and we can find the make request where it is. So here make request, create a new farm request class. We can, so we will create a farm request class, and we will define our rule, and this rule will be accessible, unanimously accessible throughout the application wherever you want in a controller or in any method. So we have to not to define each time the validation method. So let's create PHP artisan make request and create farm submit request. The naming convention is you to use is to create, you can define your own. So create farm submit request, so you can give it any name. So hit enter. So you see in a directory, a request directory will create it automatically, and it will create a request, creates farm submit request, and open it. When you open it, this class is extend the farm request, which is the base class from validating the request. So it comes from farm request. We are only concerned with the validation rules. So here we can define our rule just like we have done in our home control. This validate email required email, and if you want to make it a return true, if you want to authorize the only authorized user can access this, you can also define it. The validation rule can be accessible to auth check user. If there is a user which is logged in, so we can use by check helper method of authentication facade. So make it only a true and define the rule true, and here we can define our rule. So the rule is we have already defined, and it is email commit paste it and email required email. So you can define number of rule for suppose name and required and min 5 character. So you can define it live way. All your rule you can define in your one file, and we can include this file in our so application. So we have to give the namespace exact name for which is app. Under app there is an http directory, and we have a request directory. So app http http uh, under http there is a request directory, and under request directory so we can put we can put the create, which is create farm submit, create farm submit request. So we have to just include the exact absolute path of your our file create farm submit request, and we can now mm, ex- so we can now include this farm request in our store request. So request object is no more required. We can only the created request farm submit create farm submit request, just include it and remove the validation rule that we have defined it, and now it will use the rule that we have defined in our create farm request email is required, and it will check the validation. So it will now check we can use reusable the code from the same throughout our application, and not we have to define by the and each method a single a validation this validate method. So let's check it and it is validating or not. So we have an in a web we have our root email which is goes to a store method with name email, and we have a home a farm with root email, and it is submitting the farm. So input field is email, which is getting the email and displaying the old email data if there is an email data persisting the old email data. Let's quickly check to in our browser it is validating our request or not. Just put submit and you can see the email field is required. And if we put Rana and again, so this is not the valid email address. So where come from these messages? So so this message is where come from. So we have an English in the previous some of video we have defined our validation rule. So all the defined validation messages are here. So where we have defined our custom email rule that is required the email field. So email is, I can change it to now the email is required to confirm that this rule we have generally that defined in our validation English custom rules it is working. This is not the I'm changing syntax to confirm this is not the exact way of email. So remove it this message and see it is working, and let's refresh our page, put it. So this email is required, this email is required, and if I put only a name, so you can see, so this is the exact way of email. Not the this is not the exact way of email. So again refresh it and put it Rana and see it. So this is not the exact. So these are the messages that are accessing from our right. So if we put our default the correct email address, and it will die down our request and show the email address where it is. So we create form submission uh, request So the create farm request, we have now created the generic general rule for our request, and we have to just include the created farm request to our controller wherever you are using it, so you can include it. So you see it is not dumping our request, mm, it is validating, but you see, and it's showing the persistent data, but not also validating but not dumping our request. If I use give the correct email, so it returns back to the our page, and we are everything is good, nothing is wrong with the dumping die dump request email. So only issue is with we have defined our rule for email and the name field name. So but in a farm, you see there is a no field for we are not getting input for name. So that's why it is not dumping the request object. And let's remove the only set the only inputting field that is email, and save it. And now dumping the request email, you can we can see it will fix that issue. If we give the exact email name, no error with the with email, and we have to submit, now it is dumping our request. And we can dump the whole request objects, and it will dump the complete request object. And this is create farm request. So this will now become the object, and in a request bag we have our email. Where is it's not request request objects, and we have an a parameter which is a token and email and submit. So that's it.